So the first bill up will be Senate Bill 191. Senator Gonzales, your approach to the imponderable daylight savings time issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee. Mr. Chairman and members, we have been working with this for, a few years, and in the process, we have learned a lot, and also, it has been to where a lot of research has been done also. And one of the parts that I see this, is that adjustment, twice a year. And where I'm coming from more is with being in education for 30 years. I saw how it really affected students. And then the other part is that seeing how, several variables and several things that happen, in this part. Well, just for now, this past week, we have seen the inclement weather that has been, for example, in Taos, it was one day it was 25 below. So by having a daylight saving time, that means students would be in position to ride a bus 1 hour earlier. And 1 hour earlier in the winter is a big difference, very big difference. The other part is towards the change from daylight saving time to the Mountain Standard Time in the fall. That last few weeks, students are in the dark, waiting for the bus. And that is one portion of it. The other one is the adjustment that it takes to them, the adjustment that it takes to the adults, the adjustment that it takes to the entire, of education. Now, the other part that I have always looked at this very serious is we see where our rating is as in education in New Mexico. And right at the time when we come in, when we change from the standard time to the daylight in the spring, a lot of the schools at this time, this is when they're implementing their annual assessment achievement test, and that takes a big part because the students have been, with two schedules and part of their readiness and part of their rest, at home, and also with family members, of how it affects them too. So I see this, in many parts, how it really does affect this part. The other part is with counterparts of the state of Arizona, I have had a lot of communication with, and they're just in one time. They're on the standard time, and it works very well for them. Arizona has very much stabilized, and this is what they use and how it works. So with that, Mr. Chairman, on the research part, I do want to have I have an expert witness, and he is Mr. Jeff Gentry, PhD, Professor of Communications from Eastern New Mexico University, and he has some facts for us from the research part.
Great. Thank you, Senator. Dr. Gentry, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Senator Gonzales, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you very much for the opportunity. More people die if they live under artificial time, according to new research published in the journal Time and Society. Our ENMU research team found evidence that indicated a 22% higher death rate on the roads where people's clock time is divorced from natural time. This corroboration includes a large amount of evidence from the field of chronobiology, which is the science of 24-hour physiological processes, as well as neurology. Our ENMU-based study is only part of the picture. We found not only is artificial time a problem during a daylight savings changeover, but throughout the 8 months a year that the United States is on daylight saving time, and that includes New Mexico. We found more than 1,000 excess deaths per year on the roads attributable to artificial time. And it isn't just the total hours of sleep. And this is something that the chronobiology community has been trying to communicate, but has had a difficult time reaching the public and policymakers. It isn't just the total number of hours of sleep, it is when those hours occur in relation to the movement of the sun. It isn't just a temporary spike during the changeover to and from daylight saving time. But road fatalities, our research, are just the newest development in this research, only the newest malady linked to artificial time. Daylight saving time is the worst insult to human sleep timing, which, as I mentioned, occurs for almost 8 months out of every year. The problem is called social jet lag, which Professor Till Ronneberg of Germany has been instrumental in developing this line of research that, as Senator Gonzales said, is very established now over the last 20 years. DST is a contributor to social jet lag, and social jet lag has been found to increase the risk of stroke, heart disease, obesity, dementia, and cancer. Permanent daylight saving time in 1974 killed children trying to walk to school in the dark. I was one of those children, a 5th grader, trying to walk to school in Montana, which was very dark in the winter, and this brief experiment was quickly discarded by Congress and was not renewed for the next year. Daylight saving time is unnecessary. We spring forward precisely when the days are getting longer anyway. It's a convenience for some and a detriment to others. The promised energy savings that went behind the 1966 law have not panned out in the least. The most recent study, which studied Indiana, which was a perfect case because they went from standard time to daylight saving time in the mid-2000s. And they found that energy use went up by 1% rather than down by anything. Evening leisure is one of the arguments made in favor of daylight saving time and permanent daylight saving time. However, it comes at a heavy price in terms of bleary-eyed mornings. This is not the Truman Show. We cannot cue the sun. Daylight saving time does not add even a minute of daylight during the summer or any other time. In conclusion, I suggest that chronobiology research drives the final nail in the coffin of the case for daylight saving time, much less permanent daylight saving time. If we care about the health and safety of all New Mexicans, we will embrace permanent standard time.
Thank you, Doctor. Anything else, Senator? Let's go to the audience. Just give a show of hands, those who favor keeping daylight savings time away from New Mexico. Raise your hand. You do, but you don't. Is that what you're?
No, I do.
You do, okay.
It's personal, it's not the social.
You're not an official statement of the social work organization, but
Mr. Chair, we just got word that the Zoom's not working, so we're down for a minute.
I'm sorry, the Zoom has stopped working, so we're just kind of waiting around till it kicks back in. Will it be up soon?
He's calling IT right now.
Oh, good. And we do have, we have 2 people on Zoom who are opposed. Is there anybody here who opposes this? Okay, we have 2 on Zoom who do, so when we get back on, we'll listen to them, and then we'll go to the committee.
sweeties. These are my granddaughters.
Best chairman. He's the best chairman. He keeps it all calm and fair.
Most of the time. There are,
Oh, except for that.
yeah, that's right.
Mr. Chairman, I was telling you, you're really good because you're getting us out of here before 7. That constituency.
Okay. If we get back on Zoom, what are we going to do? They go to St. Pius.
Oh, okay.
That's because my daughter teaches at St. Pius. So.
We just have to wait 1 hour for the clock.
We're up. We're back on. So we have 2 people on Zoom who want to speak in opposition. And the first is Joshua Orozco. Go ahead, Mr. Orozco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, my name is Joshua Orozco. I'm with the Border Industrial Association in Santa Teresa. I have concerns with this bill mainly because for periods out of the year, it would put us out of sync with the time in El Paso and more importantly, Chihuahua, Mexico. If you can imagine, our port of entry is one of the most important things we have in our region. And if our time is incongruent, there would be an hour out of the day that our port would be closed, but business hours would be open in Chihuahua. So you'd have trucks waiting at the port to cross into the United States. This would make our port less attractive to Mexican companies and investors looking to Santa Teresa for investment. Another issue with this bill is with regards to workforce. If you can imagine, if you are an employee here in Santa Teresa, but you may live in El Paso, your childcare options become a little bit more complicated when the timing that you have to come into work does not sync with the time in El Paso. And the same goes with the other way. That would impact current employees. Now for potential employees, if you can imagine, like most other places, a lot of workplaces are having difficulty finding employees. And this would make our region less attractive for potential employees. So for those reasons, we stand against this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good. Okay, thank you, Mr. Orozco. And next we have Jerry Pacheco, also I think with the Border Authority. But
Mr. Chairman, members, can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you, but you have to hold the mic real close to your mouth and really project.
Okay, so thank you for letting me speak. I'm the president of the Border Industrial Association. We represent the state's largest industrial base with about 130 members. More than 20 years ago, El Paso and Juarez made the decision to go along with New Mexico on daylight savings time so we could truly be a borderplex region and we could grow this region. It's been highly successful. Our port of Santa Teresa is now the 6th largest on the entire U.S.-Mexico border. The state has spent millions and the private sector billions in investing in Santa Teresa. What's going to happen if this bill passes is several things. Number one, companies that are leasing their space in Santa Teresa are going to be an hour different in time zone from their suppliers or buyers in Juarez or El Paso for 4 months out of the year. We will see those leases dry up and we will see those companies move to El Paso. And I tell you, because I've been in this business 32 years, our competition in El Paso will use this against any prospect that comes into the region saying, you don't want to be there. The reason you're coming here is to be tied into the other side of the border. Plus, when we recruit companies, it's going to be a hard sell to say, hey, come to southern New Mexico. And we're on a different time zone 4 months out of the year, but that won't affect you. That's absolutely going to be a killer. And so we've spent so much money and so much time building this industrial base, and without understanding the implications for what we're doing down here, this is disastrous.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Pacheco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We'll go to the committee next. Anybody with questions from the committee? Senator Gallegos.
Mr. Chair and Senator, I think the last time you brought this, I brought up the same type questions. My wife would rather stay on daylight savings time, but in listening to the two in opposition, have you had any other discussions with any of the other businesses on how this would affect them? I understand you're trying to look out for the safety of the kids, early, late driving, but I'm wondering what it does to the standard businesses as they have to change time to adjust to this schedule.
Very well. Mr. Chairman and Senator Gallegos, let me yield to my expert witness.
I have a very happy update for those who care about trade with the nation of Mexico. Mexico no longer observes daylight saving time as of a bill passed there last year. If we want good business with Mexico, then we will stay with standard time. Or in other words, or get off of daylight saving time.
Mexico stays on standard time?
The nation, I'm sorry? Yeah, well, I mean, I have this here from, I already knew about this because it was well known that Mexico has joined Arizona in observing standard time, but I have this here from, from a daylight savings time website. On Sunday, October 30th, 2022, the central zone and the mountain zone of Mexico, including Ciudad Juarez and Ojinaga, turned the clock back 1 hour for the last time at 2 a.m. It was 1 a.m. Mexico has dumped daylight saving time. Now, as far as El Paso, I would say join us, because our study found that West Texas, aside from El Paso, which is in mountain time, suffered 85%. Well, that was Amarillo. 85% more deaths over a 12-year period than the national average. Midland, Odessa, 3 times the national average.
Well, Mr. Chair and Senator and gentlemen, so just thinking through the discussion about Mexico, what's this do to the Navajo Nation in Arizona? Mr. Chair and Senator.
Oh. Yeah, I can answer. Okay, we'll go ahead.
Yeah, the Navajo Nation is the only part of Arizona that does observe daylight saving time. And as far as I know, they do all right. We would be joining the rest of Arizona, going on permanent standard time.
But Mr. Chair and Senator, then we would be in conflict with that portion of the Navajo Nation.
That's right.
And just thinking through that, Mr. Chair and Senator.
I think
Sorry,
we are
I'm sorry,
now
Mr.
during
Chairman.
the part of the year that
This
we
year.
are on daylight, and because I guess they would swing back and forth, but go ahead.
Right, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. But yes, I mean, just as I would urge Texas to form standard time, because 2/3 of Texas should be in mountain time. So they are among the worst, but I would also encourage them to join Mexico and Arizona and the Navajo Nation in observing standard time.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Chair. One more question, and I'm going to apologize because I don't have time to watch for this. But can you tell me what the feds are looking to do, Mr. Chair and Senator?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, let me yield to our witness.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the U.S. Senate unconsciously, with no discussion and with no debate, passed permanent daylight saving time. The House has not touched it and is not planning to touch it.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chair. And like I say, I thought I'd give more laugh that I didn't have time to watch that, but I appreciate the discussion. I yield.
Just to follow up on that, is it true that to stay on standard time, we don't need congressional approval, but to go to year-round daylight savings time, we would? Is that the case?
Mr. Chairman, let me go ahead.
Yes, that is correct. The default is standard time if we want it. So any state can adopt standard time. There's a collection, a small number of states that have passed resolutions saying once the federal government allows it, which is like a certain number of states, then it will kick in. But no, without congressional approval, they cannot. However, states can revert to standard time permanently by the state.
Anything else, Senator Gallegos? Are you all done? Anybody else? What's the will of the committee? Senator Maestas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Gonzales. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate bringing this forward because I agree that we should have one time, but I lean towards daylight savings time for two reasons. One, I think more daylight in the evening cuts down on crime, and more time in the evening gives parents more time with their kids in a daylight setting. But students would have to go to school at nighttime essentially. Do you, would anything prohibit school districts or states changing the start time of a school? How do you see that play out? Has any states adapted to that reality? What are your thoughts? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Maestas, when I was superintendent, well, first of all, when I was in school, we did have a later start. I remember that very clear. We used to start earlier, and then we would end by like 3:30. And when I was superintendent, this is one of the things that came up, that they wanted to adjust the time. And boy, did the New Mexico Activities Association came unglued, because right away would completely conflict with sports portion. And, so we never did, but with something like this, we would be, on a schedule that we would have to work with New Mexico Activities Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senator Gonzales. But the state theoretically could move everything together. So let me just get this clear. If we, tell me if I'm saying this correctly. So state government could go to standard time. We have full authority to go to standard time. If we wanted our state to go to daylight savings time, we would need the federal government to do that for us.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
And then the Texas, Mr. Chairman, Senator Gonzalez, the Texas government would then petition the federal government on behalf of El Paso County.
Well, yes, the state of Texas could, you're saying, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I believe the senator is saying that the state of Texas might exempt El Paso from daylight saving time. I'm not sure, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if they can do that. But all of Texas really should get rid of daylight saving time, Mr. Chairman, because they have a severe problem with highway deaths, as we found.
No, understand, Mr. Chairman, Senator Gonzalez, but El Paso County is on mountain time.
That's right.
And then the rest of Texas is on central time. So I'm just curious as to whether the Texas government can control the time, can have El Paso County go to standard mountain time without the federal government involved.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Maestas, I would hate to answer for another state, but I'm willing to follow up, and see what we can find out.
Okay,
And
thank you, Mr.
research
Chairman.
that part.
If the default is standard, it sounds to me like they could, but I would defer to the expert on that.
And I'm not asking whether they should or not, or whether
Yeah.
we're advising them. I'm just asking that how they could do it legally and quickly.
Right. Did you want me to speak one more time to that? Sure. Okay, yes, Mr. Chairman, I can, now that I've thought about that, yes, states are allowed to have different time zones within their state, just as they do now. So there would be nothing precluding El Paso from adopting Mountain Standard Time.
And it's my understanding that Mexico went to one time zone with the exception of the border states. But that's not your understanding, gentlemen, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, let me defer to.
Right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, the central and mountain time zones in Mexico are very similar to ours. The only difference is that they no longer spring forward.
I see. And that includes, Mr. Chairman, that includes the border states? So for 4 months out of the year, Chihuahua's a different time than El Paso and New Mexico?
Mr. Chairman, that would follow.
Okay, yeah.
So if-
That's new to me, because I always thought that Chihuahua was exempt because of the border trade. But anyway, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else? What's the will of the committee? I had suggested that we temporarily table this so that we could hear Senator Pirtle's version of this on Monday. Does anybody want to follow through on that? Or you have, yes. Is that all right? A temporarily table, is that a motion? It's non-debatable, is it, Senator?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if we table it, we'd have to then take it off the table?
No, this is
We just keep it on the
yeah,
calendar?
just hold it on. And that reminds me, God, thank you.
I would suggest we just keep it on the calendar.
Just roll it over from Monday. But we've had the debate, I think no need for the expert witness to make the trek back unless you want to go skiing this weekend or something. But otherwise, it'd be fine not to. Is that all right with you, Senator?
Mr. Chairman, that is fine.